Hello, hello. Did you get a refined
Good
intro?
sir.
Welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Today we're going to be talking about scheduling and thinking ahead and planning your days, weeks, years. That's a lot of things that we hear people talk about in terms of. I remember somebody. I think it was somebody in our studio was like, "I need, I need to start at the very end, and you just tell me like what. Just break it all the way down to when do I start today." Not that that's a unique thing to say, but I could have told the story better. But anyway, the point is that that is something that a lot of people are wondering about, and we just spent a week doing this en masse, which we will tell you our part of that, like what we did, which is way beyond what just about anybody else is going to need to do. Anyway, so that's what we're doing. But
So, well,
go ahead.
I was thinking, instead of like something cool, maybe a nice little evolution of something cool is like what's lighting you up. Because,
Well, I actually already had a something cool
So did I.
in mind because
but I'm actually saying this mostly for you, Johnny, because I know what's lighting you up right now.
yeah, but I don't feel like I've already done that twice in 2 days. I don't feel like putting on a show again on that. But I do. It is semi-related, right?
Well,
Like,
then something. Well, I figure that the things that are something cool are usually things that are lighting us up, and that's affecting our art. So it's just more of like a benefit driven something cool, where it's like, why is this cool? Because it's lighting me up.
Sean's trying to add all sorts of benefit driving things, Dave.
Benefits.
Yeah. Well, why don't you go first, Dave? What do you have?
I started watching American Gods. I had like a free trial on Stars.
Ooh, we did. We saw a script to screen on that. It was pretty cool.
Have you watched the show before?
No, I haven't.
Only what we saw on script to screen,
Yeah.
but I've read the book.
So have I.
Okay. I started the book and never, got past the wedding scene. No fault of the book. I'm like that. Like if a book doesn't grab me right away, I give up and come back to it. Anyway, I started watching it and I'm really enjoying it. I'm only like 4 episodes in, but it really takes its time, and the way it tells a story is very slow burn, and I love it. And there's like a lot of stuff you don't know until you're like a few episodes in. And the dude from Deadwood's in there, whom I fucking love. So yeah, I love the cast. I like everything about it so far. So it's very odd, very weird. I'm curious. I'm hoping that it's as good as it's like. Like I like the fact that there's like all this mystery, but I'm hoping once the mystery's gone, I still love the show as much as I do right now. That's always a danger with quirky, weird shows for me. But
Man,
yeah,
things
I'm
without
loving it.
mystery have no chance with Dave.
I know he's just out. he's not even
And it's got to be a perpetuated mystery. Like you got to be 5 minutes to the end, and like,
I need
hold on,
an
there's still
endless mystery
something.
box. Yeah, endless mystery box.
That's why he liked Inception. You never know.
I fucking love that movie.
Is Inception in your top 10?
Yeah, top 3 probably. Christopher Nolan has a new movie out in the trailers only before that fucking Fast and Furious spinoff movie.
Shot. Yeah,
What
I
the
know.
fuck? Fuck you.
Is that the
I
one that
saw
you
that.
shared, Dave? Is that the trailer that you shared recently?
No, it's not out yet on video. Or
Oh.
at least it wasn't like a few days ago when I looked. It's
No,
not like
it's not. It's not.
But
There's a
some people are
family
thinking
one.
it's going to be like a time travel or Inception like sequel. I doubt it.
Well, I hope he does time travel and shit better
No,
needed in
it's not.
Interstellar.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a sequel to Inception. It's rumored that it's maybe a. So it's a time travel Hitchcockian. It's like North by Northwest with time travel. Is kind of the vibe that people are getting.
I'm sure whatever it is, it'll be fucking awesome.
Oh, it'll be one of the best things ever. Like, well, okay.
I
So
hope Hans Zimmer scores again.
Johnny, why don't you go with your something cool next?
Well, because I actually was planning on intercepting one of your, because I thought, last week and then we had Austin on and all this stuff. But I figured it would be yours, and then I would have to jump in and say, well, let me share that with you. Do you already have a dedicated something cool?
Well,
You
no,
know what mine's going to be.
Okay, why don't we share it this time? Because
All
we
right.
both want to say this.
Right,
And,
that's exactly what I thought was going to happen. So I was going to ask in advance, can we just share this one?
Well, yeah, let's share this because my other something cool that's backup is really, we could talk about it the whole episode because it was just this week. Like that was,
Right.
like talking. So it makes sense that I could defer that and we could just kind of share our our love for this. So why don't you start, and then I'll elaborate.
Yeah, it was one. It was. We were just talking about Quentin Tarantino before we started recording, because Jim Wilburn in our company shared a video of like snippets of where he was interviewed and talking about story and writing and stuff, and I just thought it was really, really interesting. So we were talking about him, and that's his. He's got a new movie out called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Sean and I saw it just about almost 2 weeks ago, and it was just amazing. Like it's I don't know, it just kind of inspired me in a weird way, because Tarantino always does his own. It's difficult to talk about the details of this without. I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to give anything away for anybody, but this movie, even in non-spoilery ways, and all of Tarantino is like he's clearly just doing his own thing, and I'm sure this isn't literally true, but I feel like in spirit it's true, and at some point I'm sure it was true. I feel like he's making movies and doesn't even care if he makes any money on them. Like, I mean, yeah, of course he cares. He's got to put food on the table. Like he's a big director. He would have a problem with something that made no money at this point. But that's the feel. It's almost like, yeah, fuck you, Hollywood. And I thought it was interesting too, listening today to these process things that he was hearing him talk about how when I started writing scripts, people loved them, but the readers would never pass them on because it was like they didn't. Yeah, it was like I didn't know what I was doing. They were like written more like novels. And he talked about this thing where the way he writes scripts, he's like, I'm on the set every day adapting my own book because the book is the script. He writes it almost like a book. But anyway, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we saw that, and it just rammed home a lot of that and made me, it kind of inspired me in a new way. I don't know, it's still possible to do your own thing. It's still possible to make your own rules. And I don't want to do the same thing as everybody else. And so it was super, super cool what he did with that movie.
Yeah, I really, really liked it. I saw it on Sunday, the weekend it came out. And it was, we'd been looking forward to it for a long ass time. We almost were able to see it in California, but we were already home by the time it came out. And but it was Haley's first Tarantino in the theater, and she's finally old enough to see him in the theater. Last time she was 13 when Hateful Eight came out, so that just wasn't going to happen. But now she's seen most of his movies and was really, really excited about it. And Ethan even liked it, which is great because it didn't really seem like normally his type of thing. And then I saw it 2 days later again with Johnny, and I normally go through this cycle. Every time he has a new movie come out, I want to watch his old stuff again, and I start reading everything I can about him.
Yeah, they were talking a lot about the Hateful Eight, and I know that's not your favorite, but it made me want to watch it. Like,
yeah, have you seen it? Have you seen it before?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, there's a lot to love about it. Like, it's just like it's this tidy little stage play, and I do like it. It's just not my favorite Tarantino. Kill Bill will probably be my favorite forever. It's just, I don't think Kill Bill's the best, but it's the most watchable for me. Like, I just really enjoy that film.
I like that one movie he did, Angry Birds. That was so awesome.
That was amazing. Really, do you remember when he had the eagle and he was like, I'm just going to piss all over the place, man. I don't care what you have to say about it. I'm just,
really, right. It was.
Yeah.
The other guy was like, you know what it says about you pissing? Let me tell you what it says about character.
I'm really
like Tarantino dialogue.
That was really good. I'm dying to see Jackie Brown again. Haley hasn't seen that one, and we want to watch it tonight. But we had promised Ethan 2 weeks ago that tonight's movie night could be Borat again, which is his favorite movie or his favorite comedy of all time. So not that I'm disappointed about seeing Borat. I always like Borat, but I really do want to see everything Tarantino I possibly can right
now. I think that this new one is probably my favorite. Like I said again, I don't want to spoil it, but I just, the tribute to old cinema, because basically it's Hollywood in the late 60s, early 70s is basically what it is. And
it's 69. It's the Summer of Love.
Right. Well, but it went back and so but there was a lot of, you could tell that there was this, it was a labor of love, I think, and a lot of what he did because he was recreating old shit. Like he was recreating the shit that he grew up on, basically. And I don't know this for sure, but something tells me that the equipment that he was using and the kinds of film he was using and the cameras and lenses, I feel like he probably did some like, how did they do it then, or what can I get that was sort of like then.
Oh yeah, all the fake TV that he made. It was finely crafted. And one of the things that I just loved about the movie, and I could see people bitching about it, like, oh, he's so full of himself, he's such an auteur, because it is indulgent, of course it is, but that's the love letter he was making. So one of the things about living in LA, whether you like it or not, you have to be in the car a lot. There's a lot of driving. And Tarantino really embraced that. People are going from A to B the entire movie. And it's not like they just leave and then they show up at the new place. They are driving. And, Tarantino does great driving scenes. There's a kick-ass tune. But what made this so special was that every time they were driving, he was recreating parts of LA that don't exist anymore. And he would just find just the right little tiny window to illuminate, let us pretend, let us imagine what this was like back then, driving on the freeway and all you're seeing, the oldest cars are, late 60s. Sharon Tate's black Porsche is new, but that's it. So it was really amazing that he not only was able to make it feel like LA because of all the driving, but he made it an exciting part that just made it more vintage love letter than otherwise. Like everything he did, his choices in that movie are just the choices of a veteran craftsman at the top of his game.
So if you're a Tarantino fan, I would just say go see it. I can't talk to any of you about it until you have, unfortunately. I want Dave to see it so that we can talk about it too, because there's just some really cool shit that I don't even want to hint at for the fear of revealing anything. All right. So do you want to move to, let's talk schedules. What's the biggest box we want to put this in?
Okay. So the difference between most people listening to this and us is just a matter of scope and scale. But I think the fundamentals of what we're doing are applicable to anyone. And I think that even if I were, all of a sudden, my biggest nightmare happened and Sterling and Stone was no longer a thing,
Is that your biggest nightmare, Dave? Dave wakes up, thank God, Sterling and Stone is no longer a thing.
In this alternate reality, Dave is now working at McDonald's. And Johnny's back to like, what are you doing, Johnny? Are you
I don't know. That's my biggest nightmare too. I'm with you. We'll fight Dave.
All right. So in this horrible alternate reality where I'm out there just doing this on my own, I think that I would still apply so many, if not pretty much all, of the principles that we live by having a collaborative studio. And this week was a really big week for us. And nothing big happened other than we're trying to design our calendar. We're trying to get ahead, further and further and buy ourselves more and more runway. And we're handling things differently now. And we're looking at our calendar and saying, okay, 2020 needs to get wrapped. Let's make sure that we have a calendar that everybody loves, everybody can get behind, everybody understands. And once we do that, we can lock it down and anything else goes to 2021 or later. But to do that, we needed to talk to everybody and we needed to get everybody's desires and ambitions and insecurities, just everything, anything that will hold them back, and kind of understand what they needed and what they wanted and put it all together. And what we have now is this beautiful spreadsheet, which is a bit overwhelming for sure. But I don't even know.
Can you show me that spreadsheet? I don't know what it looks like. I don't remember.
You haven't seen it enough this week.
Yeah.
I know actually we haven't counted, but there's probably there's probably around 240 books, I'm guessing.
No, it makes perfect sense because, at a certain point, it's one a day at least toward the end of 2020. So
there's a lot there.
And just so you guys have an idea of scope, it's the three of us and 15 other people. So the scales are just different. It's just not something that the average author is going to need to deal about in as intense a way as we do. So Sean's being very kind. He says, we put the schedule together. Sean put the schedule together with many rounds of revision. And it was, I watched a little bit of it happen. It was kind of like watching a master paint or something. I just sat back and
somebody put a puzzle together.
It very much is putting a puzzle together.
Yeah.
Without any guidance of what the picture is. And
oh, Dave, I've never felt more understood by you. Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, like what he'd be like, oh, well, this book needs to move here.
But and then it would move seven.
Move everything else, right? And the worst times is when it wasn't even at a request. It was like, oh, I entered this twice. I'll just erase that. Fuck, it changed everything.
Yeah, it was really, really hard. Mathematically, it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, actually, which I didn't realize till I just said that just now. But it's true because there was nothing for me to hang on. There was nothing for me to borrow from or work with. I just had. I think the most important thing that I had was all these other authors' heart spaces. They have their books and their dreams, and we want to make them harmonize. We want to make money because all the authors are working together in intelligent ways. And getting calendars right is important, not just our overall company schedule, but our individual schedules. And that's what we spent our week doing, is talking to each of them. Johnny and I, we had a few weeks actually of company meetings where we really talked about this. This was a topic. And then when we were all done, really as soon as I came back and Johnny came back and we were both here, we had one-on-ones with everybody in the company. Dave's was last.
No, that's not true. Dave's was most recent.
Yeah, that's not true. Dave's, we still have two more. Anyway, getting a great pulse on what everybody wants and what everybody feels their strengths are and what everybody still acknowledges they need to figure out really gave us insight. And we just figured the way that we could help most, this Friday, recording our show, was just talking about how much that structure and that calendar means and deadlines. Because for a long time, that's not the way we operated at all. We lived by Ready, Fire, Aim for years and years and years and years. And the first time I really saw how deadlines were important, Dave and I started and we were publishing every week. What threw us was getting signed with 47 North, and we had our ways of dealing with our deadlines, but it didn't really mesh with their way or their editorial process. And I think that they pushed Dave too hard. Like somebody found a way to push Dave harder than me, and it didn't work out for him.
They broke Dave.
They did, yeah. So whatever. Like we figured that out, and Johnny and I too. Like we broke. What we realized. We broke Dave.
Breaking
what
Dave.
We realized over and over again is that we kept. We kept. Not lying to our audience, but kind of breaking the deal with our audience. We would tell them we were going to do
unintentionally lying to our audience. We had the best of intentions at the beginning, but then something would change.
Always. We would say, hey, we've got this book coming out or this series coming out or a return to this character. And then our calendar would change and we'd do something else, or our moods would change. Or we would say, hey, well, what if this book is really popular? Maybe we should jump on that ship. And even now, during Dave's one-on-one, when we showed him the calendar and something that he's writing right now for early release next year, he's pretty hyped on it. He's like, I think this is really good. It could be the first book in a series. What happens if that takes off? And we're looking, we've got a whole calendar, cemented that is...
This is in January, so if it takes off, I'll have to wait a whole year to capitalize on that.
Yeah, but what's interesting about that is that Sean and I have a book that's coming out in a few months that we wrote a year and a half ago. And it's one of my favorite books. And I look at that, and from a meta level, like I'm looking down at myself like, why does that not bother me more? Because I had to sit on that for so damn long. But actually this goes into something I was going to say while Sean was talking, is I feel like this is a big blanket statement, so I'm going to qualify it after I say it. But I think that what the indie publishing, the self-publishing industry could do right now, like what all of us as a body could do to to help any individual person's lot in life, for the long-term person, the person who wants to be at this for a while, is to slow the fuck down. And I don't mean publish less necessarily.
Right. Publish and wait to repeat.
Right. Publish, wait, ... And it is like, you can publish at the same rate, but allowing some breathing room, like sitting on something, like let's say you write 12 books a year and you still want to publish 12 books a year, like just taking a few months of hiatus to let those build up so that you aren't like this publish fire, could do a lot of good. I mean, that's what's allowed us to. So for instance, the book that I'm talking about, the reason that we've delayed it is because we wanted to have the maximal shot. We could have fired it off right away, had some short-term glory from the few people who read it, and then it would have been gone, and it would have been wasted. So that's the reason we're hanging on to it. We have a lot of those stories. So actually, because I was in on that, and I remember when Dave said that and Sean said it, and then it was like, oh, so something fundamentally has changed for me, because that actually sounds really good. If you have to wait a year, just imagine how ravenous people are going to be.
Yeah, no, I don't see it as a problem at all. And we've got there's one series that Dave and I have on the calendar for next year that we're both really excited about. We've been talking about it for a year now. And there's another author in the studio that's going to write a complementary series. I mean, one that works in tandem with the series.
It's actually just going to compliment Sean and Dave the whole time. Boy, Dave, your hair is looking very lustrous today.
Having to wait a year is not a big deal at all. In fact, it's the professional thing to do. So
well,
I think
most people forget about it.
But then how good was it? Like, really, if you can't put people on a list and tease them, and we could do a lot with the list. You could write a short story in that world and keep them hooked. There's so
have
much
to do something.
There's so much you could do. But the point is...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think that what we want, that's what we want for anyone listening to this, to understand that just because we're doing these things because we have to do them. Like we are not able to be as loosey-goosey anymore. If we owe our authors more than that. Like, we have to make them profitable, and we can't do that unless we have calendars and deadlines, and, A person is promoting B person and C person is promoting both A and B and whatever. Like, we need our list to work a certain way, and our deadlines need to work a certain way. So our business has put us in a situation where we're going to fail if we don't do this. But what I'm trying to communicate is that maybe that's a way the average author, the solo author, should be thinking anyway. Like, what if I were to block out my calendar for a year and stick to it religiously, I bet you I would make more money or see more success than pivoting 3 times because this book was popular and now I'm going to write, to that. So I understand what you're saying, Dave. I'm just saying, like, we have to grow up a little bit. And I think the calendar is there to protect us. And I don't think we're alone. I don't think yeah.
So a question, like, you can plan out. Okay, let's say I'm a solo author and I'm planning out, okay, I'm going to write 3 series in this specific genre, and I'm counting on them to do very well. And that's how I'm going to schedule it. I'm going to write 3 books in the series. I'm going to write some short stories. I'm going to, get the mailing list crafted. But what if that series doesn't click? You're committing yourself to 3 more or 2 more books or whatever. Are you throwing away your time and money on something that you'd be better off writing something different? How do you know? How do you identify?
You don't ever know.
You don't pilot. I mean, I don't know if this is what you're going to say, Sean, but if you know that you're writing and publishing 3 and they're on the calendar and they're part of a plan and they're part of a funnel and you're going to box them up when you're done, I don't think you can judge the experiment until the entire series is out.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
what we did before was we released 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then by the time we got around to saying, hey, who wants a sequel? They're like, you mean that shit 5 crazy twists ago that you never followed up on or mentioned again?
Right. And boxing up is important. So the difference is this is true for you and I as much as it's true for me and Johnny. Like, we collectively, the 3 of us were atrocious about closing boxes and, tidying things up. And we were just like, we get to tell stories for a living and people will buy them. Like, we were drunk on the amount of storytelling that we could do back in 2011 through 2014, I would say. Those were years where we created the mess that we then had to spend the next few years cleaning up. And so now we're at a point where, you know, me and you, Dave, we're done with that. Like, we've got a couple of strays out there. But really, no, most of our old stuff can be repackaged and resold, and we're working on new stuff. And I don't think that there's any risk in a like, if you're saying write a trilogy and what if it doesn't do well? So what? You'll make money on it forever. Like, you know, just find a way. It will find an audience 2 years from now, 3 years from now, with different covers and different packaging, and that's it. I mean, there's one series that I could think of in particular that we have that you could absolutely make that argument for it. It's a really good series. The writing is as good as anything that we've done. It is commercial. It's positioned commercial, but for a series of reasons that we can identify, it totally flopped. So that doesn't matter. It's still on our calendar to finish out, because we also know that it's a good series that has a ton of potential. It didn't hit the first time, and we know why, and we can pivot and do it better. So I don't think there's really any risk. I think the bigger risk is in not digging in your heels and having the confidence of a storyteller to finish what you start. And I don't think there's a big, you know, like, we get spoiled. Like, look at the whole conceit of the argument that, oh, a year they're going to forget. Do you remember just like, I don't know, 10 years ago, it would have been inconceivable that if somebody read a book in January, they could demand that book, a new version of the book, would be out by April or any.
Yeah, but I think some of the genres in the author space, they are more primed for fast releases, and I do feel that there are genres that you could be forgotten if you don't.
You are absolutely right.
That's very true.
And I think that book is in that specific genre.
And I actually agree with you 100% here. But I think that you combat that by doing a better job with your audience, doing a better job with your list.
Right. Yeah. Actually, if I could say something that I've sort of been sitting on that I thought of when you were talking is when I said that we should slow down, what that really means is gaining focus and clarity. Like, yes, it will manifest as a slowing, and like, you'll feel like there's more time, like you won't feel constantly rushed and stuff, but it also allows you to just really think about what you're doing. It allows you to ready, aim, fire rather than ready, fire, aim. So when our master spreadsheet is in columns for lines. So there's one that's mine, right? Like, what that means is these are books that I wrote solely, that I wrote collaboratively, that I had some sort of a heavy developmental hand in, or there are a few where they're like, I'm announcing them because they're like signal boosts, because they're very similar to stuff that I write. And so that's my assignment. Like, going down, this week we're doing this. This week we're signal boosting this. This week we're releasing this. And Sean said something when he was presenting it that really kind of made this click for me. And it was, this is the story that you're telling. As I go down that column, that's the story that I'm telling for this year. And then I flip over to the 2020 tab, and top to bottom, that's the story I'm telling for the year. And what that means is these are not just a line of books or things that Truant is associated with or whatever. It's also a marketing plan or a marketing box, say, like, this is one thing that we are marketing, that we are focusing on, but also, more importantly, a list, which we talk about all the time. So the reason that I wanted to look at those columns in whole, like complete, before I started communicating with my audience about it, was to know what was coming next. So if you know that your sequel to something that came out a year ago is coming out on this day, and you know it won't change, you know you won't flip-flop, then that can be something that you continually reference or go back to. Some of the stuff I needed to do with my story was expectation setting, because I am the most all over the place of the lists in terms of what the content is there. So some of it is kind of thriller type content, some of it is sci-fi. There's even a little bit of humor in there. And so if I'm going to have crass comedy sorts of things coming out later, I need to seed that early. It's expectation setting so that nobody's really shocked, which I did in an email that went out this morning. And I need to do a few things that make that not surprising for me. If I was morose and dark all the time, And then I release comedy, people are going to be like, what the fuck? But if I make a few jokes, if I'm a little inappropriate.
That's funny, 'cause I keep encouraging Dave to do the exact same thing.
Right. So that's the idea is I think that if you are communicating these will be weekly emails we'll be sending. If you're communicating regularly with an audience and if you foreshadow like you would in a book, like you wouldn't have this guy, the final third of the book just come out of nowhere and that's the guy who killed everybody or something. Like you need to foreshadow that dude. You can't just be like, well, here he is. You haven't met him before. And that's the way I think you should approach your schedule and your email list is start to foreshadow. Like don't surprise people. And I think that solves a lot of this sort of problem.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. And I've actually, Johnny saw it last year because when I started writing, I don't know, not a year and a half ago, but getting up there, I don't know, the first 10 things I wrote all just went in a pile. Like I wasn't able to publish anything. Everything went, oh, we're building this for that. Oh, we're building that for that. It wasn't until the last thing that I wrote last year, I wrote a trilogy of books with Dave, and then those got published right away in the new year, and they were to the wire. But everything other than that, I just sat on. And the last big book I wrote, like I'm looking at the calendar, and it's coming out a year from now. But where that used to agitate me, something like that, I'm writing this, and I can't see any results for a year. I don't give a shit even like the tiniest bit now. It's just like where I used to when I first started. I used to look at the dashboards all the time. How much are we selling? What are we doing? And that's not a place my head needs to be. I need to really be like, that's important for the company. Of course, this is not me waving that we're not a revenue driven company flag right now at all. It's the idea that if I'm there, that's what I think about primarily. And I really want to be focused on story. So this is very much that. And I feel relief now that, oh, I've got a year worth of runway. And that's my dream. That's my biggest professional dream right now, is to be a year ahead in what I owe everybody. And so that I can take chances when I want to take chances. I can capitalize on opportunities that I didn't see coming. Because Johnny and I, the company at large has had a few really big opportunities lately that we can't fully capitalize on because it would mean walking away from things that we
in the case of the one he's talking about, it would have meant two months away. We can't afford that right now.
Yeah, it would be like we have other authors. We have a depth of responsibility that we can't turn away from right now. But if we were a year ahead on everything, then there's parts of the company we could run remotely and still do this other thing. So that's where we want to get to. And that's like, I want anyone, I don't want it just for me. I want anybody I work with. So like Johnny, Dave, Bonnie, the four of us really need to be a full year ahead on everything. And then we're able to, just be more pliable as a company.
So slow down, plan, be a pro, all that stuff. All right. Well, speaking of shadows, I will just mention in parting that Dave has his first nonfiction book coming out. It's like bookversary or book birthday or whatever. It's like first arrival of Dave in a nonfiction realm. It's called Into the Darkness. What's the tagline? How to
hook your readers. Oh, damn it.
I don't remember what the fuck it is.
Well, because we didn't use yours. That's why.
Right. You didn't use mine? Oh.
No. It's hook your readers without getting lost in the dark is what it is. Because we've been trying to get Dave to write nonfiction for a long time, and he's really good at it. That's how I met him, was as a nonfiction writer. And I just know that he could kill it. And he has such a deep insight that he I don't know, it's not that he's ashamed of it, but he doesn't believe that it has nearly as much value as it does. And so Dave wrote a book about writing from the darkness and writing from that place, and it's exceptional. I'm really, really proud of this book. I love what he did. It's all Dave. You get to go inside his head. It's funny. It's funny, it's dark, and it's hopeful. And I think anyone who reads it will be a better writer and understand Dave a little more, which is a good thing.
I want book blurbs that says I went in Dave's head and I never came out.
Once you go Dave, you never go back.
I could do that. I know the people who are in charge of the book. I could totally make that happen.
Not fake ones. God.
So I don't have a URL yet or anything, but that's from. I think that join the list is, I want to say, is /stone tables. That sound right? sterlingandstone.net/stone table. If it's not, then I'm sure that's a lovely URL that you can go and enjoy in its own right. But anyway, so that book's coming out and it'll be really cool. And we're releasing new nonfiction like every other week. So lots of that. All right. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next week on the Story Studio.
Adios.
Bye-bye.